Welcome to the Cricket Fixes podcast, where we tackle the tough topics of personal development, sprinkled with some raw vulnerability and a touch of humor. I'm your host, Cricket, and each episode we're diving into the realms of healing, growth, and self-discovery. So let's be fearless and awesome together. It's time to get your Cricket Fix. And before we jump into the episode, I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, Lift Fitness, here in beautiful Bend, Oregon. Looking for a fitness environment to help you become better every day? This is it. Lift Fitness Studio offers classes and personal training sessions to help bring out the very best you. Their classes range from cycling, strength and conditioning, HIIT, body sculpting, and strength training. Their goal is to meet you exactly where you are to help you improve your life. Take your first step and sign up for your first class. And when you use Cricket10, you'll get 10% off a membership. I work out there, and I hope to see you there. Welcome back to the Cricket Fixes podcast. This is episode number 2. And I'm opening up about my journey to being alcohol-free. This is going to be part 1. I promise you're going to want to subscribe on wherever you listen to podcasts, because in part 2, I really get into the incredible psychedelic journey that I had that really shifted things permanently. Or at least I believe they did. But really, being sober curious is quickly growing in popularity, and I absolutely love that. In fact, I predict that within 10 years, and a lot of people argue even less, that drinking alcohol will be just like we think of smoking cigarettes today. And we're just going to look back and go, oh my gosh, can you believe that we used to go to happy hours or have booze stored in the office, whatever. I really believe that because more and more information is coming out about how damaging it is to the body, but I'm really going to talk about it from a very different perspective, a very raw perspective, a very vulnerable perspective. As you know, on this podcast, one of my goals and ambitions is to end the shame of what it means to be a human being. I think there's a lot of suffering in silence. I think there's a lot of us that are struggling with, anxiety, depression, addiction, it's shame. and we're not openly sharing it because of that shame and guilt and, all the things that come with being vulnerable. But, I'll say this time and time again. I was around 14 years old when I realized I'm an open book. And I really believe that's my purpose, is to share a lot of my challenges in life to hopefully validate the fuck out of you and also inspire you to go, wow, if Krista can do that, then I can do that too. And that's really my goal today with sharing my journey to being alcohol-free. So the reason why I'm breaking this up into 2 parts is because I'm going to focus on the history of my alcohol abuse, as well as the big shift that happened in 2015. So I took my first drink at 13 years old. I will never forget this. I was at a party. We were celebrating our 8th grade graduation. There's probably like 30 of us there. And there were cans of PBR everywhere. And I remember having 3 beers. And I remember also having the biggest crush on one of my classmates, Marty. Marty, if you're listening, yes, it's you, at 13 years old. And I remember the euphoric feeling of having a buzz. I mean, you can imagine 3 beers at 13 years old. I was pretty drunk, but it was over a period of time, and thank God I had food on my stomach. But I drove home that night, and I laid in bed and I had the bed spins, and they were hell. They were absolutely awful. And I remember I couldn't tell my mother about it. There was no way I could tell my mom I was drinking. So I kind of hid it and buried it and dealt with it for the night. And it was fucking hell. I remember that. But what did I do the next day? The next day, my friend Kim and I walked down, I don't know, a mile to the local market, and we found a guy to buy us a case of beer. And he comes out and he was like, make sure you don't tell anyone about this because I just got out of jail. I mean, I just look back on some parts of my childhood and I'm so lucky that I'm safe. So Kim and I took the beer back to her house and we cracked open a couple. We enjoyed them. And then I packed up a bunch and I rode my bike back to my house. And I get to my house, and this is like, I tell this story quite often because it'll give you a window into my honest soul. I cannot tell a lie. Well, I can, but I really try not to. I value honesty. But I get home and we had a small boat in the driveway, and I climbed up into the boat and I stashed the beers in the seat in the bow of the boat that lifted up, and there was some storage underneath. So I stuck them in there, and all of a sudden I see my brother's head looking out the window, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Nothing. Shut up." And he goes, "What are you doing? What are you putting in there?" I was like, "Shut the fuck up." And then all of a sudden my dad's head popped in the window, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Something bad." And my dad came out and I showed him it was beer. I gave him the beer and we had a conversation. He sat me down. We had a conversation about drinking. So at the time, you'll come to hear this in the podcast. I'll talk a lot about my mom being severely bipolar 1 my entire life. She was diagnosed with it when I was only 6 months old. So that's really a big part of my story and my trauma, my complex PTSD. So at the time, my mom was in the hospital and my dad sat me down and talked to me about, like, you can't be drinking, blah, blah, blah. Now, meanwhile, my dad worked for Miller Brewery. So while I completely understood I'm 13 years old, I shouldn't be drinking, I didn't know why. So there wasn't information and a conversation about brain development, executive function as a 13-year-old versus, a 25-year-old. There was no talk about that. There was no talk about risks of developing an addiction, right? There was no talk about that. There was no talk about, what are you escaping, honey? Like, why are you consuming alcohol? There was no deep discussion about it. It was just, it's bad. You can't do it. You're too young. Okay. Thank God there's more and more and more information coming out about where parents and, rates of alcohol use are going down in generations because there's so much more information about it. Thank goodness. But that was the beginnings of my drinking. And it really didn't stop until 2015. Now, it's not to say that I wouldn't go for, long periods of time. I can see over the course of the age of 13 to I would say 26 in particular, outside of college, I was a very, very, very heavy drinker. But outside of that, I really, around the age of 21 to 26, I really, quote unquote, had a handle on it. What we would classically or today call a social drinker or a casual drinker. I wasn't a heavy drinker. In fact, I had some nevers. I never drank on a Sunday. I never drank Monday through Thursday. The idea of it was just like, there's no way I would do that. Really fascinating because when I was in college, I drank every day, and like binge drinking every day. Like, my tolerance grew so quickly. It was easy for me to consume a 12-pack and still be quite coherent and in control of myself. It was pretty scary. And yeah, as I say that, I'm like, shit, I look back on that and I can't believe I'm telling this massive audience about this. But, you know, I know there's a lot of us out there that had these experiences, and it's a really full circle story to give you some hope and inspiration that you too, no matter how deep and long your patterns have been, there's an opportunity to change that. So fast forward about the age of 27, I moved to San Francisco, California. And that's where my drinking accelerated and became out of control. And like, I can't really understand why, other than it was like the heyday. So I moved to San Francisco in 2000. So just when the first big .com boom really took off. And it was just such a gluttonous time. Like, everyone was eating and drinking and partying. Like, everything was like more in that area. And I didn't realize it, but I was developing habitual patterns of excessive drinking, and to the point where I was drinking every single day. And I would say I was easily drinking a bottle of wine a night. And believe it or not, my alcohol use got worse. Although, as I reflect back on my relationship with alcohol, I would say that was the scariest, most out of control time for me. Even though, you know, as I move on later into the story, I'll share more about in part 2, you know, how I got up to 2 bottles of wine a night, but was a highly functioning, because I had developed such a tolerance for it. But probably my scariest times, like blackout moments, like poor decisions, like throwing up, like, you know, just really poor sexual decisions, like really bad, was during my time in San Francisco. And this is also a time when I was around the age of 21. I was diagnosed as bipolar 2. So what that means, the big difference is I wouldn't have psychotic episodes. I would just be what's called hypomanic. And typically when you're hypomanic, so like grandiose sense of self, accelerated talking, spending a little bit more, but really making careless decisions, being promiscuous, although I hate that word, but maybe making some decisions around sex that you wouldn't normally do. I'll put it that way. So that's for another episode why I don't like that word. But it was a really, really scary time. And then fortunately, I had kind of like a break in that pattern. And I moved to Portland, Oregon. And it's not that my drinking got better. It really wasn't. It's just that my tolerance increased. And so I fell into a crowd that all of us had a culture of excessive drinking. And one of the things that we loved to do was to go to Timbers games. And so it would just be like a Friday afternoon. We would go, we would meet at the bar, we would play a couple hours of poker, then we would go to the game, drink there too, and then we would leave and go out all night. And I mean, they were some of the best memories. You know, just, I didn't realize what I was doing to my body. I also didn't have any real spiritual connection. I didn't know what my life purpose was. I just knew that I was climbing the ladder. Like, everything was work hard, play hard, work hard, play hard. And I just created that story in my life that I kind of clung to. I got into a wonderful relationship with, he's now my ex-husband, but I got into a wonderful relationship where I really, for the first time, felt a sense of safety and loyalty and acceptance. And he drank seldomly. We were coming from very opposite ends of the spectrum, which was really balancing and grounding for me. And AJ, I just want to thank you for our years together, for being that grounding force in my life. So it was 2012 is when, so I have a background in hospitality. I've been doing revenue management and commercial strategies for hotels, resorts, retreat centers for over 30 years now. And I hit a very hard wall in my life. Can't remember my age. I can't do math right now. But it was sometime in my late 30s, early 40s, where I was just like, this isn't right. Like, something in me felt incongruent is probably the best way. Something was off. I knew I wasn't living who I am and who I was meant to be. And so I went on a journey of self-discovery. I went to my first ever retreat. It was called a soul retreat from Sedona Soul Adventures. I hope you all are still operating. That's a shout out for you, because it was such a pivotal experience in my life. I met with over 11 practitioners in 5 days. And the way that I describe it is I just wooed the fuck out. I was meeting with fairies and spirit guides and doing holotropic breath work and hypnotherapy and getting my soul portrait made. Like, I just dove in and did it all. That's kind of my nature, which you'll probably pick up in this podcast as you hear my journey more and more. One of the things that I struggle with is this idea of I'm like a light switch. I'm either on or off energetically, and the things that I do and work on. And I'm learning how to find the downside of that, and also the balance in that, and also the gifts in that. So I'm really trying to reframe that and say, well, here's how it serves me. But anyhow, I went in headfirst into that retreat. And then within 3 months, I was signed up and completed a course to become a certified hypnotherapist. Like, it really opened my mind to healing work, inner child work, breath work, meditation, connecting with guides, and having a spiritual practice that's bigger than all of us. And I'm not pushing that on anyone. I'm just wanting to share what really landed for me. And then that was right around the time there was layoffs. It was a big, 2008 to 2012 was a really messed up time in hospitality. Well, it was a messed up time for all of us. It was the Great Recession, right? But it's where I started a private practice doing coaching, hypnotherapy, and Reiki. And it's really where I started. And then I also became a nutritional therapist. And it's really where I started to put the pieces together of my horrible relationship with alcohol. So in 2015, my husband, AJ, at the time, AJ and I, he was so fucking supportive. And we committed to giving up alcohol for a year in 2015. So I think it was January 15th of 2015. Now, by this point, I had learned some tools that were going to help me with that. I had done a pros and cons list. So if you're listening to this episode, or if you know someone that's struggling, have them write out a pros and cons list of giving up alcohol or taking a break from it, even if it's a day, even if it's a month, if it's a year. Because what that showed me, and I always forget the number, but I had like 37 reasons why it was going to benefit me. I was going to lose weight. I was going to feel good in the morning. I was going to be pain-free. I was going to reduce inflammation. It was going to save me money. It wasn't going to put a strain on my relationships. Like, I wasn't going to be like blackout texting or calling. Like, there were so many reasons that it was a pro. And the detriment, like the cons were like 5 things. Like, oh, I'm going to miss out, right? That's a fear, by the way. I'm not going to be able to let loose. I'm going to have to deal with conversations and people being challenged by it. It was such a short list. And I'm such like, I would definitely say I'm such a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I don't know. I was like a fierce cookie. Like, I don't care what people think about me. Like, yeah, I'll have the conversations with them about not drinking. So I wasn't too worried about what others were going to think or say to me because I kind of just had this like F you attitude. I don't care. I'm doing what I want to do and this is right for me. And actually, I think you might want to do it too. But I created this company called Fitlandia. And so I really wanted to take people on the journey of me giving up alcohol for a full year to completely change my relationship with it. And I was 100% successful. For an entire year, I did not have one drink. And I went from the highest weight I was at was 192 pounds. I was down to like, I don't know, I think I lost 50 pounds from that year. So, I mean, incredible health benefits, but clarity, calm, active. My body felt great. My mind felt great. My heart felt great. And here I thought I had done it. I had rewired my brain and changed my relationship with alcohol. I was so proud of that. And I remember my re-entry back into not drinking. Oh, by the way, I wanted to say this. The reason why I did a full year is I wanted to get through birthdays, anniversaries, New Year's, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween, party. I wanted to go through every normal event that revolves around alcohol and really prove to myself I could have a great time without it. And I did. Like, I was happy. And at that time, I still didn't know all of the physical damage it does to the brain and the body. So I mean, yeah, I felt so much better, but I didn't understand chronic inflammation, not to the extent that I do today. So if I had known then what I know now, would I have ever drank again? No. And I want to give that hope for you. So I was perfectly happy. I mean, I was on top of the world. I was in, honestly, the best shape of my life. And then we started drinking again. And it was very, very mild at first. It was like, a drink here, a drink there. It was only 2 drinks. But that's the thing with alcohol is the tolerance builds up. And then to get that little dopamine hit, it's a little bit more and a little bit more frequent. And it creeps in. And then the next thing you know, you're back into a pattern. Now, this isn't everyone, but this is certainly me. And this is certainly with, as I've learned, like chasing dopamine, whether it's sugar, sex, gambling, just firing up the brain. For me, I'd gotten into this pattern. And I actually see it with a lot of people, the pattern of drinking. So anyhow, we're removing the shame around that. There's something happening in the brain that's making you say, I need one more. I need one more. And I need one more. So, of course, there's other ways to get dopamine that support your goals and support living out your purpose in life. But I was still in this like facade of like, oh, I can have a healthy relationship with alcohol. So that was 2015. Between, I would say, because when it really escalated, when my drinking re-escalated, and I'll kind of stop it here shortly and do part 2 for you all, is about 3.5 years ago in 2021. So got through COVID mostly okay. Like my drinking didn't just skyrocket through COVID, thank goodness. But it was around November of 2020 when my situation, my relationship situation, my housing situation, my financial situation completely changed. And what I've now come to learn is I did not have safety in my life, and alcohol was like my security blanket. And it would be from November to 2020 until, oh, this is interesting. I hadn't thought about this. Until November 26th, 2023, that I would escalate back into a level of drinking that was out of control. I am blessed and lucky that I am now, as of this date, how many months? I think I'm around 10 months alcohol free, thanks to the grace and support of a really big psychedelic journey that I did on November 29th, 2023, as well as microdosing, and as well as truly understanding the motivation, the need that my brain had to feel safety. I never even had that concept in my head. How it would quiet things, numb the fear, numb all of the incredible. I was under incredible instability and stress. I would say I was in a state of distress for a very long time, and alcohol was my safety net. So I'm going to leave it there because we're about at our 30 minutes, and I want to keep these short and sweet for you. But I'm going to come in with part 2, and I'm really going to focus on how that all changed as I led into my psilocybin journey with, it's interesting, I only had like a secondary intention of taking a break from alcohol, but it was through the journey that I found it's time to let it go for good. So I so hope that you will leave a comment, let me know what you're thinking, feeling, and do a little journal prompt for me for the next episode. Like, write your pros and cons list. If you're thinking about taking a break from alcohol, write down your pros and cons list. And then please, wherever you're seeing this, hearing this, leave me a comment. Let me know. What are the things that would like really shift in your life if you gave up alcohol for good? And then what are you afraid of? What are the cons? What are the scary things? What's the downside? If we don't give our brain the opportunity to process both of those, we have a missing piece of the puzzle in order to letting it go. So I'm planting the seed with you here today. I hope you know that you have a beautiful brain. It just needs a little bit of support, maybe a little motivation, a little inspiration, and I've got you here for that. And I hope you'll tune in to part 2, where I share with you the really big rewiring that shifted my brain for good. I love you all. Until then, be well. Thanks so much for tuning into the Cricket Fixes podcast. If you're craving more support on your journey, head over to cricketfixes.com and sign up for the newsletter to get your fix of love, abundance, joy, peace, and freedom today.